Okay, good morning to the second meeting of Cabinet via the remote technologies that we're using. I welcome you to this being held under the Local Authorities Coronavirus Meetings Regulations 2020. As before, I just wanted to manage expectations from the outset and highlight that there may, as with some technology, be glitches during the meeting, but we will do as we've done before and work our way through that. It's not practical for this meeting to be broadcast live. However, the Head of Democratic Services is working on this and will hope to resolve this by May. A recording of the meeting shall be made available as soon as the meeting is completed. Could I ask all participants to ensure that your mics are muted when not speaking, and remember to unmute them when you wish to come in to speak. So that the public know who is on this call, on this meeting, I'll now call out those present, and can I ask you to confirm your name? So I'm Councillor Rob Stewart. I'm the leader of Council and Chair of Cabinet. And next I'll go to Councillor Mark Child.
Yeah, Councillor Mark Child, Cabinet Member for Care, Health and Ageing Well, present.
And I'll call Councillor Robert Francis Davis.
Your leader, Councillor Robert Francis Davis, Cabinet Member, Investment, Regeneration, Tourism.
Okay, thank you. Councillor David Hopkins.
Yeah, Councillor David Hopkins, Cabinet Member for Delivery.
Councillor Andrea Lewis.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Andrea Lewis, Cabinet Member for Homes, Energy and Service Transformation.
Councillor Clive Lloyd.
Councillor Clive Lloyd, Cabinet Member for Risk and Resilience.
Councillor Sam Pritchard.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Councillor Sam Pritchard, Cabinet Member for Children's Services.
Thank you. I know we have apologies for Councillor Andrew Stevens, and we wish him well following his accident earlier this week. Councillor Mark Thomas.
Yes, Councillor Mark Thomas, Cabinet Member for Environment and Infrastructure Management.
Thank you. We'll move now on to the co-opted councillors, co-opted Cabinet members. Firstly, Councillor Alison Pugh.
Yeah, Councillor Alison Pugh, Cabinet Member for Better Communities People.
Thank you. And finally, Councillor Elliot King. Okay, I understood Councillor King might be having difficulties getting into the meeting, but we'll obviously welcome in if he arrives. I'll now move on to the officers present. I'll start with the Chief Executive,
Sorry.
Mr. Phil Roberts.
Sorry, Leader.
Oh, apologies. Councillor Jen Rayner. Sorry, apologies.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Jennifer Rayner, Cabinet Member for Education, Improvement, Learning and Skills.
Thank you very much. Welcome, and apologies for omitting you. I'll move on to the officers now. We're starting with Phil Roberts.
Thanks, Leader. Phil Roberts, Chief Executive, present.
I'll go to Ben Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Ben Smith, Section 151 Officer, present.
And then to Tracy Meredith.
Tracy Meredith, Monitoring Officer.
Hugh Evans.
Hugh Evans, Head of Democratic Services.
And Martin Nichols. I don't think Mr. Nichols was able to join us this morning, so that's fine. So those are the Mr. Evans, if you could then reread back the apologies for absence, please.
Just the one apology from Councillor Andrew Stevens. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll move to disclosures of personal or prejudicial interest. I've not been notified of any, but I will pause for a minute whilst we invite anybody who has an interest to declare now, please.
Leader, it's Councillor Mark Child here. I'd like to declare an interest, please.
Go ahead.
Interest in item 8. Kyle Lasso is mentioned as one of the organisations helping to deliver this project. Kyle Lasso is one of the organisations that I will be naming as Lord Mayor as one of the charity fundraising bodies that I'll be raising money for. So I'm declaring a personal interest.
Thank you, Councillor Child. Are there any other councillors who wish to declare interests? No. Are there any officers who wish to declare interests? No. Okay, thank you very much. We'll move then to item 3, which is the announcements of Leader of Council. I've got 2 short announcements today. Firstly, obviously, we've met a significant milestone in the delivery of the new Surge Hospital in Bay Studios, the Bay Hospital. That handover will take place later today. And of course, I thank Cabinet for their support last week at the emergency Cabinet meeting. Again, as I said at the time, it has been a huge achievement. I think when the cameras and the public are able to see what's been achieved later today, they will be hugely proud of the efforts that have been undertaken by council staff, specifically Mr. Martin Nichols and his department in terms of building services, and also the contractors Kia and TRJ, and the thousands of workers who in just 5 weeks have created a hospital capable of holding 1,000 beds with over 100 wards in it. It's been a truly remarkable effort, and again, I would place on record my thanks for everybody involved in that delivery. Also tonight, we once again will be pausing to clap for carers, and the Guildhall will be turned blue in recognition of all of those critical care workers who are out there every day keeping us safe. So again, I wish to place on record my thanks and that of Cabinet for all of the frontline workers undertaking huge efforts during this period. I'll move now then to public question time. We've not been notified of any member of the public who's wished to participate in the meeting, so we have no questions. And similarly for item 5, councillors' question times, we have no councillors who've requested to participate in the meeting. So with that, we'll move to agenda item 6, the Swansea Bay City Deal Homes as Power Stations project. I'll just formally move this report. As members will be aware, the Swansea Bay City Deal at £1.3 billion did contain 11 projects aimed at improving the GVA and the jobs prospects of the economy of the region to create some 10,000 jobs. One of the major strands within the City Deal is the energy strand, and as part of that, the Homes as Power Stations project, which all 4 participating local authorities will play a part in, will deliver the next generation of energy efficient homes, helping to reduce the energy bills of those people who live in them, but also to reduce the carbon footprint and the power consumption for homes in the area. It's a very, very worthwhile project. A huge amount has already been achieved in some of the delivery that's taken place across the 4 local authorities. And I know Councillor Lewis will say a bit more about the delivery in Swansea, but very pleased to see this project come before our Cabinet for consideration before proceeding to its final sign-off with both the UK and Welsh governments. So with that, I'll formally move and I'll pass over to Councillor Andrea Lewis to second.
Thank you, Leader. It gives me great pleasure to second this report here today. Just seems like a short time ago that I had a conversation with Professor Phil Jones from Welsh School of Architecture at a housing conference discussing the concept of homes as power stations, and here we are with it being a reality. And I wanted to pay tribute and thanks specifically to you, Leader, for the City Deal and bringing this project to the forefront, which I think is going to be groundbreaking and a game changer. I'd like to touch upon the contribution that Swansea has made, which is significant. We've got a new build site, particularly at Parker Helig, which is near completion, and we should see tenants in those homes in June. Not only is the quality of the build absolutely fantastic, but it looks really attractive. And at first glance, you wouldn't really know that there were renewable technologies on these properties. They've been incorporated so well. The apprentices and our building services have expanded on their experience using, enhancing their skills, working with renewable technologies. And this is something which will be invaluable for us going forward. But the thing that I'm extremely proud of and most impressed by is the retrofit in Craigkevin Park. I'm particularly excited about that, working with Welsh School of Architecture. And I'd just like to share some of the early indications of the data that we're collecting, and it's already impressive. Bearing in mind that we've only got 21 days worth of data for April, we have seen the bills in January were £71, and in April they've already dropped to £3. And you can see the trend that by the summer, those properties will be in positive territory with their energy bills and creating more energy than the tenant needs, which could then be sold to the grid. So it's absolutely fantastic that we're doing this. And I'm working with housing associations to see how collaboratively we can procure technologies and roll this out for the benefit of all our tenants. I appreciate that will take some funding and resource, but if we can do that and give confidence to the local supply chains, then through economies of scale, we can bring the cost of those technologies down. And that could effectively mean that we could eliminate fuel poverty. So there's no small feature. It's a fantastic opportunity. I know that Cabinet members will see a list of detail of the technology in section 4, but I'm very, very pleased, very, very proud to second this report today. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. And can I also pay tribute to you and all of the team in Building Services who delivered this. And a point that I didn't make in my introduction, of course, there's a really positive story to also be told on local procurement of this in terms of the delivery of those sites. Whilst some have pointed to the Preston model in terms of where we should go, it's clear from the figures I've seen that we're already in advance of Preston. And I would urge Welsh Government and others to continue to look at local initiatives which are delivering far more in Wales than those over the border in England have been able to do for date. And I think recognition should rightly be placed in terms of what's been delivered here in Swansea, and I'm sure what will be delivered across the region in due course. I'll pause there now and ask if there are any Cabinet members who wish to come in and comment on the report, or have any got any questions for either myself or Councillor Lewis?
Yes, please, Leader.
Yes, Councillor Davis.
Yeah, I'd like to again add my thanks to yourself and to Councillor Lewis. Yourself and your tenacity right at the beginning on making sure that the Swansea Bay City deal became a reality. You pushed and pushed and pushed and wouldn't take no for an answer. Some of the outputs that are now being seen on housing and getting people out of poverty. I can remember the very early figures that you said where you would get annual bills down to £70, and I'm thinking, well, if it doubles that, we'd have achieved something. But those figures for April under 21 days when people are in lockdown are absolutely staggering, because people are in the house and therefore using more energy at this time. I know I certainly am. But it's the job skills that will come out of it, the supply chain, the standards that now being set is going to be the way forward for the future. The carbon reduction targets are going to be met. But I suppose more importantly, at this time of COVID-19, the jobs that will be created, or those jobs that will be kept within our region. So congratulations to yourself, Leader, and to Councillor Lewis for pushing ahead with the housing with the same tenacity as you showed in getting the city deal.
Thank you, Councillor Francis Davis. And I think, as you referenced there, I think the benefits that will go to council tenants in terms of the eradication of fuel poverty longer term are really ones that we should be very, very proud of, because people should not be faced with a heat or eat decision in their homes. And I'm sure, as Councillor Lewis has said previously, what we're building are actually better standard than the private homes that are being delivered by the private sector. And therefore, and why shouldn't it be that way? If people require a home from the council, why shouldn't they get the best? And again, very, very pleased. So thank you for that, Councillor Francis Davis. Is there any other Cabinet member wish to come in or comment? No. If that's the case, then you have the recommendations there. I've moved them. Councillor Lewis has seconded. I'll go now to Mr. Evans for the vote.
Hi, councillors. I will read your name out. If you can say whether you're for the recommendations, against the recommendations, or abstaining from the recommendations. Councillor Rob Stewart.
For.
Councillor Mark Child.
For.
Robert Francis Davis. Robert Francis Davis.
Microphone.
For the recommendations.
Councillor David Hopkins.
For.
Councillor Andrea Lewis.
For.
Councillor Clive Lloyd.
For.
Councillor Sam Pritchard.
For.
Councillor Jen Rayner.
For.
Councillor Mark Thomas.
For.
That's 9 votes for. That's unanimous vote. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. So that vote is carried. We'll move then to item 7, which is the second stage construction FPR7 contract report for the authorisation for remodelling and refurbishment of Bishopston Comprehensive. It's on page 142 of your documents. I call in Councillor Rayner.
Thank you, Leader. I'm very pleased to be able to bring this report to Cabinet in these really difficult times for construction. Before I actually turn to the report, I'd like to place on record my thanks to the teachers and staff at Bishopston School and all our other secondary schools who have made an enormous impact in using materials and machinery within our schools to produce PPE equipment for the health service, our care homes, and any other worker that requires additional protection. I think they have been really inspirational, and they have used a lot of technology in a positive way. They have linked up with local technology and engineering firms, and this will stand us in good stead for the future in more employment opportunities for our young people leaving schools. And I'm sure you would all like to add your thanks to that as well. Turning to the report itself, the report does include the revised costs for the remodelling and refurbishment of Bishopston Comprehensive School, but I have to say this is dependent on confirmation of the grant and the contract with the Welsh Government. And as you know, they are engaged with many other projects, and we are chasing ministers to get the right meetings in order to get the letters of approval out as quickly as possible. Going through the report, you can see in paragraph 1.4 that planning consent was obtained on the 9th of March 2020, which was the day before schools were officially closed down throughout Wales. This school, the start of our work on the English medium secondary school is the second priority. As you know, under Ban B, we had to address the Welsh Government's concern about the provision of Welsh medium places. We have moved on swiftly with that, so we're now starting on the second big priority, which is the English medium secondary sector. Bishopston is the first of those secondary schools to be worked on in the next few years. Section 3 is a description of the whole scheme. Paragraph 3.5 has the timeline, and I'm very pleased to say that we have been able to keep to that timeline, although there have been numerous stops and starts, with the loss of a contractor last year, the reappointment of another contractor, and also the lockdown impact and the number of small firms who've actually gone into furlough. But we have made enormous progress and still look on schedule to open the school in September 2022, the start of the new term. If you go on to paragraph 5.3, you can see that during the winter period, Kier commenced the process of working through all its subcontractors on the package to make sure they had certainty about the degree of costs. That is summarised in paragraph 5.3. Section 6 is on the capital, and I'll draw your attention to the table in 6.6, which has the main contractor costs coming in at, I'll round up the figures, 12,725,000 pounds, and then we go down through the extra legal costs and fees to end up with the final price, which is what this paper is about. I'd like to draw your attention to the EIA, which accompanies this report, because it shows the huge amount of work that's been undertaken with the whole school community, including pupils, with our commitment to listening to children and children's rights. They have contributed to the design and the layout of the school. There is a degree of urgency in approving this report because we would like to move some of the buildings around, including installing a modular building, which will allow teaching spaces which pupils can move into when we have to start some reconstruction work within the existing buildings. In paragraph 8.7, we see the community benefits, and I'm very pleased, and I'm sure all of us are, that the funding we have got for both Band A and Band B has been a huge multiplier to our local economy in attracting subcontractors and providing training and employment opportunities. And in Appendix 1 at the end of the report, you can see the financial implications spread across a number of years, moving to completion in 2022, September, when the pupils will actually move in. So in summary, I'd like to recommend the report to you. The recommendations start on page 142 and 143. But again, I draw to your attention to the fact that we are awaiting final approval from the Welsh Government. And Leader, whatever you can do to keep them on track, I would be very grateful.
Thank you, Councillor Rayner. As you know, I will always chase ministers to give approvals on things that are exceptionally important. And again, thank you for that. In second in the report, all I would really add is just to remind people, this is the biggest ever capital programme that we've undertaken with schools. It remains the biggest element of the capital programme for the council, investing some £150 million into our schools estate to give the children who learn in our authority the best possible facilities. And it's not just about new schools, as this report underlines. It's about investment into existing schools, remodelling them and repurposing them to be the best facilities that we can offer to our children. Again, I'm very, very pleased, like yourself, that this is going forward, and that hopefully this school will be open by the September of 22. I will, of course, push the ministers for a swift decision on the funding. With that, I will pause there and ask if there are any Cabinet members who wish to come in and comment or ask questions on this report.
Leader, Councillor Mark Child.
Yes, Child.
Yeah, I'd just like to compliment and congratulate the Cabinet member and her staff for bringing this forward today. It's not just the work that they've done, but as Councillor Rayner said, the way in which they've consulted and involved people in bringing it forward as well is just as important as the project physically itself. So I'm sure that I know that it's needed. I'm sure that the community of Bishopston and the whole catchment area will be delighted to see this investment that the council's managed to get and implement for their school. And I look forward to it being completed and being used as an excellent educational facility and community facility. And I look forward to the projects as they roll out across Swansea as well. But well done. Very much look forward to it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Child. Is there anybody else who wishes to comment? If not, then I'll go to Mr. Evans to take the vote.
Thank you, Leader. Same process again, councillors. Please say if you're for the vote, for the recommendations, against the recommendations, or if you're abstaining. Rob Stewart.
For.
Mark Child.
For.
Robert Francis Davis.
For the recommendation.
David Hopkins.
For.
Andrea Lewis.
For.
Clive Lloyd.
For.
Sam Pritchard.
For.
Jen Rayner.
For.
Mark Thomas.
For.
Again, Leader, that's unanimous with all 9 voting for. Thank you, Mr. Evans. That vote is therefore carried and that report is agreed. Thank you all very much. We'll move then to the final item, which is agenda item 8 on page 166. And this is the funding for emergency or temporary supported housing scheme for homeless vulnerable people during the COVID crisis at T. Tom Jones. I'll call Councillor Lewis in to move the report.
Thank you, Leader. In my opinion, this will be an invaluable asset to give much needed additional support for homeless and vulnerable people. In item 2, you can see that Pobl own the building and will continue to act as a landlord. I have to thank Pobl, and I think this is an excellent example of collaborative working at its best. They will work in partnership with Woolwich and Kailas, who will provide 24-hour support for up to 20 single homeless people over the age of 18. And this will initially run for a period of 12 months, but we will be evaluating that after 6 months. And after 12 months, if the scheme is working well, we will then reconsider whether we want to continue and extend the scheme. The project costs are in section 3.3, and the council will seek to reclaim full costs from the Welsh Government COVID funding. However, I must draw Cabinet's attention to the risks which are set out in 5.2. The risk being that a project of this type, we will be asking on a month-to-month basis for funding from Welsh Government. And obviously that month-to-month funding, that ongoing funding is not guaranteed in any way. So if for any reason we don't get funding from Welsh Government, then this could therefore fall on the council to fund going forward. 5.4 will show that this is going to be an effective contributor for a longer term application, as I said, and we could submit that to the Housing Support Grant Commissioning Group to be considered. So formally move the report, and I'm very happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. I'll second the report. Again, like yourself, very, very pleased to see this year. I think this is absolutely the right thing to do, despite the risks, as you've quite rightly outlined. I think Swansea Council has led, we have led on homeless initiatives across Wales, specifically this winter with our Always a Bed initiative, where we made the pledge that anybody who needed a bed would get one, or a safe place to stay. And again, we followed through on that pledge, and by that, many people have been helped over the winter period. This will allow us to extend that support during the period of COVID crisis, and of course making sure that our most vulnerable people in society are getting the help and support that they need. And I can't see anything that speaks more to our principles as how we act as a council and how we look after our most vulnerable people. So very happy to second and support this report. Thank you, Councillor Lewis, for that. I'll move now to ask if anybody has any comments or questions that they wish to place on this report.
Leader, Councillor Mark Child.
Councillor Child.
Yeah, I mean, clearly for homeless people during COVID-19 or people struggling with homelessness, lockdown and being told to stay at home, it's a very difficult, a different prospect to the vast majority of us who are lucky enough to have safe homes to be in. So I think this is a brilliant initiative to provide a safe place for people who are amongst the most vulnerable in our society. So I congratulate the Cabinet member and her team and our partners for bringing this online. Whilst I appreciate that this is a temporary measure, but certainly currently, but whilst they are residents, will we be in any way helping these people beyond making sure that they're safe and secure and reduce the risk of them catching COVID?
Thank you, Councillor Childs. I'm grateful for the question. What this facility will do is it intends to bridge the gap between rough sleepers going into B&B, and then this will be the interim measure where we will provide multi-agency support to help them to move on to permanent accommodation and permanent housing. So there's going to be a series of support mechanisms in place, and the outcome that we want to achieve is very much in line with our Housing First model, where we want people to secure a tenancy and sustain that tenancy, and that could include things like employment support and various medical support if necessary. Councillor Child's absolutely right to highlight it is a difficult time at the moment, particularly for people in B&Bs dealing with this lockdown process, and this facility is going to be invaluable in helping relieve the pressure and give much needed additional accommodation.
Thank you. Any other Cabinet member wish to comment or ask a question? With that, Councillor Lewis, I'd echo Councillor Childs' thanks to you and your teams for everything you're doing to support vulnerable and homeless people, and also what Councillor Pugh is also doing with regards to refugees and other vulnerable groups during this time. So again, thanks across the piece on that. With that, then I'll move again back to Mr. Evans to take the vote.
Thank you, Leader. As before, if you're, please state if you're for the recommendation, against the recommendation, or if you're abstaining. Councillor Rob Stewart.
For.
Councillor Mark Child.
For.
Councillor Robert Francis Davis.
For the recommendation.
Councillor David Hopkins.
For the recommendation.
Councillor Andrea Lewis.
For the recommendation.
Councillor Clive Lloyd.
For.
Councillor Sam Pritchard.
For.
Councillor Jen Rayner.
For.
Councillor Mark Thomas.
For.
Thank you. Again, Leader, that's unanimous vote with all 9 voting for.
Thank you. So that report is again carried. Can I thank you all for your attendance? That brings the meeting to a close. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Leader.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.